9/11, the September 2001 attacks, the World Trade Center, the Taliban. The first name that comes to mind is Osama bin Laden. Hello and welcome to UPSC Polity View. Today, let's learn about Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, born 1957, Saudi Arabia, and died on May 2, 2011, Abbottabad, Pakistan, was the founder of the militant Islamist organization al-Qaeda and mastermind of numerous terrorist attacks against the United States and other Western powers, including the 2000 suicide bombing of the US warship Cole in the Yemeni port of Aden and the September 11, 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon near Washington, D.C. Let's learn about the early life of bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was one of the more than 50 children of Mohammed bin Laden, a self-made billionaire who, after immigration to Saudi Arabia from Yemen as a laborer, rose to direct major construction projects for the Saudi royal family. By the time of Muhammad's death in an airplane accident in 1967, his company had become one of the largest construction firms in the Middle East, and the bin Laden family had developed a close relationship with the Saudi royal family. Osama bin Laden studied business administration at King Abdul Aziz University in Jeddah, where it is likely that he also received instruction in religious studies from Muhammad Qutb, brother of the Islamic revivalist Sayyid Qutb, and Abdullah Azam, a militant leader. Osama bin Laden's time at the university was key to his future role as a leader of al-Qaeda, not only in influencing his radical views but also in providing him with the skill to market al-Qaeda. Let's see how Osama bin Laden built al-Qaeda. Shortly after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979, Osama bin Laden, who viewed the invasion as an act of aggression against Islam, began traveling to meet Afghan resistance leaders and raise funds for the resistance. By 1984, his activities were centered mainly in Afghanistan and Pakistan, where he collaborated with Azam to recruit and organize Arab volunteers to fight the Soviet occupation. Bin Laden's financial resources, along with his reputation for piety and for bravery in combat, enhanced his stature as a militant leader. A computer database he created in 1988 listing the names of volunteers for the Afghan war led to the formation that year of a new militant network named al-Qaeda, in Arabic the Base, although the group remained without clear objectives or an operational agenda for several years. In 1989, following the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden returned to Saudi Arabia, where he was initially welcomed as a hero, but he soon came to be regarded by the government as a radical and a potential threat. In 1990, the government denied his request for permission to use his network of fighters to defend Saudi Arabia against the threat of invasion posed by Saddam Hussein's Iraq. Bin Laden was outraged when Saudi Arabia relied instead on US troops for protection during the Persian Gulf War, leading to a growing rift between bin Laden and the country's leaders. And in 1991, he left Saudi Arabia, settling in Sudan at the end of the year. In the early 1990s, bin Laden and his al-Qaeda network began to formulate an agenda of violent struggle against the threat of US dominance in the Muslim world. Bin Laden publicly praised other groups' attacks on Americans, including the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center in New York. In 1994, as bin Laden expanded his group's infrastructure in Sudan and trained Islamic militants to participate in conflicts around the world, Saudi Arabia revoked his citizenship and froze his assets, forcing him to rely on outside sources for funding. In 1996, under heavy international pressure, Sudan expelled bin Laden and he returned to Afghanistan, where he received protection from its ruling Taliban militia. Later that year, Bin Laden issued the first of two fatwas, which in Arabic means religious opinions, declaring a holy war against the United States, which he accused, among other things, of looting the natural resources of the Muslim world, occupying the Arabian Peninsula, including the holy sites of Islam, and supporting governments servile to US interests in the Middle East. Bin Laden's apparent goal was to draw the United States into a large-scale war in the Muslim world that would overthrow the existing world order and establish a single Islamic state. To this end, al-Qaeda trained militants and funded terrorist attacks. In 1998, Bin Laden ordered an operation larger than any of al-Qaeda's previous operations. Simultaneous bombings of US embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, which altogether killed 224 people. The United States retaliated by launching cruise missiles at sites believed to be Bin Laden's bases in Afghanistan. Another al-Qaeda bombing in 2000 targeted the USS Cole, an American warship harbored in Yemen, and killed 17 sailors. The growth of the organization was attributed in part to Bin Laden's charisma. He was known to be a skilled orator, able to manipulate a variety of rhetorical strategies and to make his message easily accessible even to the uneducated. At the end of the 20th century, Bin Laden was thought to have had thousands of militant followers worldwide, in places as diverse as Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Libya, Bosnia, Chechnya, and the Philippines. Let's learn about the September 11, 2001 attacks and the US pursuit of Bin Laden. In 2001, after 19 militants associated with al-Qaeda staged the September 11 attacks, the United States led a coalition that overthrew the Taliban in Afghanistan. In December 2001, Bin Laden went into hiding after evading capture by US forces in the Tora Bora cave complex. In the following years, US forces searched for him along the Afghan-Pakistan border, during which time Bin Laden remained absent from the public eye. Then in October 2004, less than a week before that year's US presidential election, Bin Laden emerged in a videotaped message in which he claimed responsibility for the September 11 attacks. After that, he periodically released audio messages, including in 2008, when he threatened retaliation for the deaths of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and in 2009, when he challenged the nerve of the new US President Barack Obama to continue the fight against al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, US forces had continued to hunt for Bin Laden, who was still thought possibly to be hiding either in Afghanistan or in the tribal regions of Pakistan near the border with Afghanistan. US intelligence eventually located him in Pakistan, living in a secure compound in Abbottabad, a medium-sized city near Islamabad. On May 2, 2011, Bin Laden was killed when a small US force transported by helicopters raided the compound. His body, identified visually at the site of the raid, was taken out of Pakistan by US forces for examination and DNA identification, and soon after was given a sea burial. Hours after his confirmation, Bin Laden's death was announced by Obama in a televised address. Several days after Obama's announcement, al-Qaeda released a statement publicly acknowledging Bin Laden's death and vowing revenge. Later that month, al-Qaeda released a final audio message said to be from Bin Laden, purportedly recorded by him shortly before he was killed. In the message, Bin Laden praised the Tunisian and Egyptian uprisings of early 2011 and called on al-Qaeda followers to help people struggling against unjust governments. Let's hear what President Barack Obama said on the death of Osama bin Laden.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts. On September 11th, 2001, in our time of grief, the American people came together. We offered our neighbors a hand, and we offered the wounded our blood. We reaffirmed our ties to each other and our love of community and country. On that day, no matter where we came from, what God we prayed to, or what race or ethnicity we were united as one American family. We were also united in our resolve to protect our nation and to bring those who committed this vicious attack to justice. We quickly learned that the 9/11 attacks were carried out by al-Qaeda, an organization headed by Osama bin Laden, which had openly declared war on the United States and was committed to killing innocents in our country and around the globe. And so we went to war against al-Qaeda to protect our citizens, our friends, and our allies. Over the last 10 years, thanks to the tireless and heroic work of our military and our counterterrorism professionals, we've made great strides in that effort. We've disrupted terrorist attacks and strengthened our homeland defense. In Afghanistan, we removed the Taliban government, which had given bin Laden and al-Qaeda safe haven and support. And around the globe, we worked with our friends and allies to capture or kill scores of al-Qaeda terrorists, including several who were a part of the 9/11 plot. Yet Osama bin Laden avoided capture and escaped across the Afghan border into Pakistan. Meanwhile, al-Qaeda continued to operate from along that border and operate through its affiliates across the world. And so shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of our war against al-Qaeda, even as we continued our broader efforts to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat his network. Then, last August, after years of painstaking work by our intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that we had enough intelligence to take action and authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body. For over 2 decades, bin Laden has been al-Qaeda's leader and symbol, and has continued to plot attacks against our country and our friends and allies. The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat al-Qaeda. Yet his death does not mark the end of our effort. There's no doubt that al-Qaeda will continue to pursue attacks against us. We must, and we will, remain vigilant at home and abroad. As we do, we must also reaffirm that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. I've made clear, just as President Bush did shortly after 9/11, that our war is not against Islam. Bin Laden was not a Muslim leader. He was a mass murderer of Muslims. Indeed, al-Qaeda has slaughtered scores of Muslims in many countries, including our own. So his demise should be welcomed by all who believe in peace and human dignity. Over the years, I've repeatedly made clear that we would take action within Pakistan if we knew where bin Laden was. That is what we've done. But it's important to note that our counterterrorism cooperation with Pakistan helped lead us to bin Laden and the compound where he was hiding. Indeed, bin Laden had declared war against Pakistan as well and ordered attacks against the Pakistani people. Tonight, I called President Zardari, and my team has also spoken with their Pakistani counterparts. They agree that this is a good and historic day for both of our nations. And going forward, it is essential that Pakistan continue to join us in the fight against al-Qaeda and its affiliates. The American people did not choose this fight. It came to our shores and started with the senseless slaughter of our citizens. After nearly 10 years of service, struggle, and sacrifice, we know well the costs of war. These efforts weigh on me every time I, as Commander-in-Chief, have to sign a letter to a family that has lost a loved one, or look into the eyes of a service member who's been gravely wounded. So Americans understand the costs of war. Yet, as a country, we will never tolerate our security being threatened, nor stand idly by when our people have been killed. We will be relentless in defense of our citizens and our friends and allies. We will be true to the values that make us who we are. And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done. Tonight, we give thanks to the countless intelligence and counterterrorism professionals who've worked tirelessly to achieve this outcome. The American people do not see their work nor know their names, but tonight they feel the satisfaction of their work and the result of their pursuit of justice. We give thanks for the men who carried out this operation, for they exemplify the professionalism, patriotism, and unparalleled courage of those who serve our country. And they are part of a generation that has borne the heaviest share of the burden since that September day. Finally, let me say to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 that we have never forgotten your loss, nor wavered in our commitment to see that we do whatever it takes to prevent another attack on our shores. And tonight, let us think back to the sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. I know that it has at times frayed, yet today's achievement is a testament to the greatness of our country and the determination of the American people. The cause of securing our country is not complete, but tonight we are once again reminded that America can do whatever we set our mind to. That is the story of our history. Whether it's the pursuit of prosperity for our people or the struggle for equality for all our citizens, our commitment to stand up for our values abroad, and our sacrifices to make the world a safer place. Let us remember that we can do these things not just because of wealth or power, but because of who we are. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much for listening to this discussion on Osama bin Laden. For more such discussions, get the UPSC Practice app from the App Store.